I can't think of any Spider-Man jokes. Webb, directed by Marc Webb. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was directed by Marc Webb, stars Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Jamie Foxx, and Dane DeHaan. And this is obviously the sequel to Amazing Spider-Man 1. And Peter and Gwen are kind of going through a little bit of a rough patch after graduation. And then what ends up happening is this guy who's really obsessed with him, Max, kind of gains these powers. And through a lot of circumstances, multiple villains end up coming after him. Going into this, I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I heard great things about this movie. I heard terrible things about this movie. I heard in the middle things about this movie. So I really had no basis for if I was going to like this movie or not. And I can safely say that I did like it, but I struggled for a really long time on how much I liked it. Because the best way to put it is there are individual parts that I really, really liked, but as a whole, there were problems, and it was missing some things. And some things were there that shouldn't have been, and it was good, but it had problems, definitely. Before I get into anything about the plot, I'll just talk about acting. Andrew Garfield is an amazing Spider-Man. He's absolutely perfect. He's funny, and that was what the crucial aspect of Spider-Man that the first trilogy got wrong, is that Spider-Man's hilarious. And you can really tell in like the first scene, well, the first scene that Spider-Man's in, it's just hilarious when he's literally, someone stole a truck, they're going, shit! And he's literally making jokes at the guy, the criminal who is driving a truck through traffic, pursued by 20 cops, and he's just sitting on the thing, making jokes to him, and it was hilarious. It was great balance of kind of this broodiness and comedy as far as Andrew Garfield goes. Emma Stone is also very, very good as Gwen Stacy, much better than Kirsten Dunst was as Mary Jane. And the chemistry between Garfield and Emma Stone is absolutely fantastic. They have amazing chemistry. They're like a real, well, I think there are actually a couple in real life, and it's really obvious that they go great together, and they have great on-screen chemistry. And that's a really, really big part of this movie. The relationship between Peter and Gwen is actually probably the most prevalent thing in Amazing Spider-Man 2, is kind of their problems, because she is going to doesn't actually matter. She might be going to college in England. So that's kind of a big force of drama, and there's kind of just a lot of stuff going on there. Jamie Foxx as Electro, I really liked him, partly because of before he became Electro, he showed this really, really different side than when he actually did become Electro. And though it was obviously the same person, you could really see a lot of character development and how he got from this spot to this spot at the end, instead of just randomly becoming evil. Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn, he was okay. Like, there were some scenes that he was very good. There were some scenes that he was all right. Like, he was a little spotty. And Sally Field was all right as Aunt May. But Jamie Foxx, Emma Stone, and Andrew Garfield were really good. And everyone else was just kind of like, okay. Looking in plot, there were a few parts that I really, really enjoyed. The fight scenes are really cool, especially one specifically with Electro. It's really cool. And one with Green Goblin at the end is very cool. But then there's a couple scenes that Gwen and Peter, because of their really good chemistry, those scenes work. But then there are just other parts of the movie where it's like there's nothing happening. And they kind of make a big deal out of Peter's dad and like, oh, he has secrets. It's like they spent a way, way, way too much time on that when it could have been well spent somewhere else. And it ended up like what the secret was. It's like, yeah, it was important, but really not that much. Like, they could have just said it in some offhand remark and it would have gotten the same effect. Like, it was kind of an unnecessary piece of information. And then the way that the villains interacted was both good and bad. At first, it was really good, because kind of the problem that I had with Spider-Man 3 is that it was pretty much just, here's Venom, now here's Sandman, and there's New Goblin. Like, they were all just one by one, no connection to each other whatsoever. This one, they're connected. They're like working together, even though they don't usually fight him together, which would have been awesome, but they work together to take him down, and that's something that I did like. But then the villains, they kind of like get a lot of build up, and it's kind of like fall apart. Like, not much happens. Like, they pretty much get 2 fight scenes each, and it's very abrupt. especially with one of them. It's just very like, okay, you're done, and then he's just done. Also, the Rhino is in this for about 4 minutes. He's like, that's pretty much it. Like, he's not important at all to the plot. Like, they kind of advertised him in the trailers. He's not in this movie. And I really can't mention a lot of... there's one specific thing that I loved, which is probably the best part of the movie, that I can't mention because of spoilers. And there's a couple things I didn't like that I can't mention because of spoilers. But honestly, I had a lot of trouble putting into words what exactly was holding me back. Because at first I was like, oh, I really like that. But then as I'm like going to rate it on like IMDb or thinking about my rating for this video, there's something holding me back from giving a really high rating. I really had to think about it. I like looked at other critics' reviews to try and see if they put into words what I was feeling. And they didn't. Like, I couldn't, like, the best I could find, it feels incomplete. There's something missing. It feels like a bunch of scenes instead of a movie. Like, it just kind of seems a little fragmented, but it was good. It was probably in like the top 50% of Spider-Man. It was in the top like half of Spider-Man. It wasn't bad by any means. It was good. Good acting. Marc Webb knows how to direct an action scene. The action scenes were cool, but a lot of them were given away in the trailer. A lot of the action, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen most of the action scenes, which is kind of depressing. But this was definitely the most emotional of all the Spider-Man movies, which worked at most of the time. Most of the time it worked, and it was emotional, and that was good. One kind of weird problem that I had is that he used a very modern soundtrack. Like, the score was excellent by Hans Zimmer, but then like the soundtrack, he used one or two very modern songs in scenes, like, just kind of like to put them over, and it just brought me out of the movie. Like, kind of just went like, oh, I heard that song on the radio today, and then it's kind of like, it doesn't really work. But all in all, a lot of things in this movie worked. The action was great. The acting was pretty good. The writing had its moment. It's like, it was just a little too spotty for me. I give The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a B+. It took me a long time to come up with that rating, and I think it's maybe a little generous, but I think that's a good rating for it. So definitely check it out. Find the biggest screen you can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.